I am Jack Pauler, and I am an analyst, and I'm going to talk about technology careers. This is a talk I've given a couple of times many, many moons ago at VMUGs, and I thought I'd update it a little bit and talk about it. Sort of lessons learned, but not from baseball games, but from the School of Hard Knocks. Let's see. So people often ask, you introduce yourself, people say, what are you, what do you do? I used to say I was a jack of all trades, technology person, because I did a little bit of everything. But now I typically introduce myself as I'm an engineer turned marketer turned industry analyst. I started my career getting a double degree in math and computer science from Carnegie Mellon, with some fun activities along the way. Carnegie Mellon has a very unique program called Buggies, which is basically a very high-tech soapbox derby / relay ride. And when I say high-tech, we had custom rubber made for us by Goodyear for the tires, all sorts of high-tech stuff in it. I started my career in software, developing some of the very first SNMP agents in networking software. I then transitioned to hardware and became a chip designer, chip verification guy. Along the way, working for a lot of different startups, I moved into operations. I ran chip manufacturing, IT operations, business operations. I then went and got my MBA at Santa Clara University in global entrepreneurship, and actually moved into marketing and sales, and I did a lot of marketing leadership for pre-revenue and early stage startups. And then I also, along the way, became a university lecturer. I taught statistics at Santa Clara to undergrad business majors for 3 years. And then I became a consultant, and I provided a lot of advice on marketing, on engineering. Along the way, I had a gig where I worked for a biotech company, helping them do presentations to the FDA to get medical devices approved. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a couple of side hustle businesses that I ran with a partner, a tech field day partner for a couple of years, and then I have my own firearms business. And now I'm an industry analyst. I spent 13 or 14 years with Enterprise Strategy Group, and now I'm on my own, running an industry analyst firm called Paradigm Technica, and joining you folks at Tech Field Day. So I want to go back to sort of what your job is and what you say you do. So maybe my audience, Nathan, you can tell us what would you say your job is?
Right now, helping people understand how to do things that we don't currently do.
Okay, that's a good answer. What about you, Ken? What do you think? What's your job?
Broadly speaking, solutions development and go-to-market.
Right. Great answers. When I gave this presentation at VMUGs, VMware user group meetings, a lot of people would say, I'm a sysadmin or storage admin or a database admin, right? I view my job a little bit differently. My job is to make companies successful. That's the simple part. The hard part is how I make them successful or more successful. And that comes into, as an engineer, I did that with developing products. As an analyst, I do that by helping them marketing, helping them tell their story about the products. But how do we measure success is very important. In the world of business, there's exactly one measure of success that matters, and that's profit, right? And there's exactly two knobs we can tweak in engineering speak to control profit. We can either increase our revenue, increase sales, or we can reduce our costs and our expenses. And at the very end of the day, no matter who you're talking to, that's what you want to be thinking about. What am I doing to help the company be more successful? How is what I am doing either decreasing our costs or increasing our sales? So when in a job where you're focusing on it that way, and particularly as an analyst and a consultant and a technologist, you have to influence people. And that can be very daunting and very hard for people to do. Is you don't want to tell people things, you want to get them on your side and convince them that your vision your way of doing things, whether it's making a change to a program, adding a new feature, fixing a bug, or it's all the way up to we should invest in this business or not invest in this. You have to influence other people on the team. So part of how we influence people is through politics. It's through talking about the problems. It's through getting people on your side. It's through building coalitions. But as technologists, all the people I was talking to, and still to this day, most people in the technology field view politics as evil. And it's not really evil, it's the way things happen. When you are an individual contributor, you're responsible exactly for what you do. As you move up in the hierarchy of an organization and you become more early management, middle management, and senior management, your measures of success is your ability to influence your team to get things done and your peers and your other organizations. In cross-functional teams, particularly, it's important to be able to influence, and part of that is through politics. Now, Stephen is looking at this. Stephen, do you know what that's from? That is from The Wire, which is a television series that is a crime drama, but it is also an absolutely pure demonstration of politics in the workplace. It looks at politics between the informal politics of a drug dealing organization and the formal and informal politics of the mayor's office and the formal and informal politics of the police and the formal and informal politics of the school board. And if you ever want to learn about politics, watch the show to see how people work with each other. Part of a job, particularly in a startup, is getting things done no matter what. Sometimes you can't convince people to do the right thing, or sometimes you have exigent circumstances and you have to make things happen no matter what. So I was in a startup once where our building was broken into and all of the laptops got stolen, all of the memory and all the desktops got ripped out, all the processors got ripped out, and I was running operations for the company. So we needed to keep operations going, we needed to keep running, so I called up CDW and placed an order for 20 laptops and desktops and whatever, and ordered it. And one of the senior directors in the company was very upset because I didn't allow him to choose his laptop. He wanted the ultralight because he's traveling, whatever. And, and he blew his stack and lost it. And I said, look, my job is to get the company back up and running after this catastrophic event of theft. And we don't have the time to personalize everything. We just have to make it happen. And didn't win me any political favors, but it did win me favors from the CEO because I kept our downtime to a minimum. So thinking about our career, we have to sort of understand our goals and where do we want to go, right? And this is the proverbial question everybody gets asked early on: where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? You don't want to think about it that way, but you do want to think about in your job, in your day-to-day life, is what are you doing today and where do you want to be and what do you want to go for? If you are in an environment where we just spent a lot of time talking about automation and the cloud stuff, maybe you want to go and spend time learning about, say, Ansible and Terraform so that you can become the automation specialist for your organization. If you don't know that, what's the goals that you have? And I use an image of sharks here because sharks always say that most sharks have to keep moving in order to breathe. If they stop moving, they die. So with a goal, there's a similar analogy, which is if you're not moving towards your goal, you're by definition moving away from it. So as you think about your career, is the stuff that you're doing important to achieve your goals and get you to the next step in your career? Also very important is articulating what you want to the people who can help you get to and achieve your goals. If you don't tell them this is what you want, they won't know. So when I first joined an engineering organization in a startup, I was going to become an engineer, and that's how I thought my life was going to be, and I would just be a programmer for a while. After a while, I realized that I was bored and I didn't like working with screens as much as I liked working with people. And I said, I want to turn myself into a marketer. And so I told my company, I'm going to go and help you with marketing, right? This is where I want to do. What can I do to help? And this is my goals. And work with me to do that. And once they knew, they were like, oh yeah, this is great. We obviously need help here. Let's go figure out a way to do that. But if I didn't tell them, they wouldn't know. If you're going to do something that is off-brand or a reach or stretch for you, you have to do the job in order to get the job. You can't say, I'm a marketer now and give me marketing, let me do your marketing if you've never done it before. Nobody's going to have you do that. So you actually have to do the job to get the job. And that applies particularly when a lot of people think that, oh, well, I've been doing this for 4 years. Now they should promote me to becoming the manager. Well, being the engineer for 4 years or 10 years doesn't mean you have the skill set to be the manager, right? You have to figure out what that is to do the job, and then do the job and demonstrate that you can do it so that people will either promote you or hire you in that position. There's a common saying, fake it until you make it. And the problem with that is people can smell bullshit a million miles away, right? So you have to fake it until you become it. You can't just walk through life without actually doing the things that you need to do. So my version of this is specificity breeds credibility. The more specific you are, the more you know, the more you can talk about it, the more credibility you have, the more you're not faking it, you're becoming it, and you can do it. With that, it's important to think about things from many different angles. I talk about sometimes that there's no such thing as a sphere. When you look at a sphere, however you turn the sphere any different direction, it's still a sphere and it still looks identical, right? But if you look at this photo here, there's a whole bunch of different perspectives of people looking at the same thing completely differently. The absolutely death-defying and crazy gymnast is looking down at the top of this thing and praying she doesn't fall off. The guy with the mask is trying to hold out his selfie stick. It might be hard to see, but there's a guy at the bottom with a camera pointing up. And then there's us looking at it and saying, how absolutely insane are these people, right? So there's many different perspectives, and it's important throughout your career to keep an open mind, take a break, take a breather, and look at things from a different perspective. A lot of what we do in our lives is about problems and solutions, and this is what I call marketing 101. And it's a big trap Silicon Valley startups in particular fall into, is they talk about how they do things, all the cool technology. And we love technology, we're all technologists, we're all geeks, we love this stuff, and we love hearing all about the guts. But that's not what sells, that's not what sells you or what's important. It's the story of what is your problem and how can I solve that problem for you? And for your career, it's the same thing. What is the problem the company has, and how are you solving that problem for the company that you're working for? Part of the marketing and selling yourself, particularly marketing yourself, is how do you present that information? How do you tell that story? Now, as an analyst, one of the things I do, I work with a lot of startups, and it's very hard to tell somebody who's poured their heart and soul into founding and building a company, and they've sunk their life savings into it, and it's hard to tell them that your baby is ugly, right? That it doesn't work, or it's not really, the way it is today, people aren't going to buy it. So instead of telling them that, you want to ask them that and lead them to a conclusion that you want to get to with a series of pointed questions that will help them understand some of the issues you see. And again, from a third-party outsider's perspective, no spheres, looking at it from a different perspective, you see some things that they don't see, but asking them, have you thought about this? What about that? What about some other thing? Versus telling them. We're always selling, and Stephen, you should recognize that one, though. That is Glengarry Glen Ross, which is a famous movie and show about salespeople. And it is the quote that this character was famous for was always be closing. The reality is, in our lives and in our careers in particular, we're always selling, and we're always selling ourselves. We need to sell ourselves as the right person for the job. And every interaction we have with somebody is selling ourselves, are we the right person? Careers are about people, not about resumes. And this is really important right now. And this is our friend. So Andy Banta has now come up twice. And Steve, you've seen this photo, I think. This is Andy Banta and somebody famous in the industry, Chad Sackage, in the storage industry from many years ago. But right now, in particular, in this day and age, getting a job is very, very hard. This is a buyer's market, not a seller's market. There are a huge number of people in the technology industry that have been laid off from the biggies, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Dell, et cetera, that are all looking for jobs. And this is an area, we had an interesting discussion earlier today about automation, and this is an area where automation is failing us absolutely massively, where if you send a resume in, it is processed by an AI applicant tracking system. And if it doesn't have 14 and a half of the 15 points that you need in the characteristics, your resume is never seen by a human. But your career is built on networking and people relationships and who you know. After you get to a certain point, 3 or 4 or 5 years out of college, almost all of your jobs are going to be gotten by connections with your network, who you know, who they know, who's looking for a position. Hey, my buddy Jim is looking for, is available, and he'd be a perfect fit for the thing you need. We live today, particularly post-pandemic, and I did this pre-pandemic, but post-pandemic, we live in the Zoom world. But you can't build trust through Zoom, right? It just doesn't work. You know, and I'm giving this presentation to a group of 7 people here, but to you in the audience online, you don't know how to trust me. It's really hard to judge your expressions, my physical demeanor, my voice, and you don't get that personal connection that you build with trust. So you really have to work on, particularly post-Zoom, post-pandemic, of getting out and meeting people and being with people. But you can kill your trust very, very quickly, right? So trust is a thing that is a very precious commodity. Don't screw it up. And then I'm going to wrap up with a couple of things, which is, this is a friend of mine and a mentor, and he's got a saying that I've modified. His saying is, find interesting and knowledgeable people and stalk them until they become your friends. And for me, it's find interesting and knowledgeable people and stalk them until they become your friends and mentors. And so that's why that is the corollary. Right?
Who is that?
Who is that?
Devastatingly handsome person.
Right? So that's really my talk about owning your career and making sure you own your career and don't just sleepwalk through life and just say, hey, you know, I've been here 4 years, I need a raise, right? That's not going to happen. I'm Jack Pauler, and I'm an analyst with Paradigm Technica. Thank you, folks.